all. This is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So today I've kept my bigger lights off for a couple of reasons. Number one, the PG&E have said to um, preserve light, electricity, because it puts load on their power grids during this hot time. Secondly, it is Labor Day as well. Thirdly, Trillium Lane and others were saying keep the lights off. So here we have the lights. Or I think they were saying. All right, let's start. Interestingly, this is a study from Los Angeles, and that shows that people whose blood samples were tested for antibodies to nucleocapsid protein of the Omicron, they reported 56% reported no symptoms. Or if they had the symptoms, they reported them as non COVID. They didn't think it was COVID, they thought it was just common cold. That's a very interesting study. We knew that people can be asymptomatic, but this is the first study where they actually looked at the percentages. And secondly, there is a hot off the press news that people were, cool beans were discussing here as well, and that is China has an inhaled vaccine as well. And that vaccine has shown better benefit compared to the third booster shots. And I had always said that when you expose an area, a surface, or any tissue where actual infection occurs, when you expose that to the vaccine, then the correct type of cells will develop in that area. So, because it's a respiratory virus, if there has to be a vaccine, if it is inhaled, that would actually be a better vaccine because it would not get involved the whole body, but majority of the respiratory epithelium will be involved. So anyways, that's a beautiful news as well. So let's start. Correct. Nipa said IgA, and yes, that is correct, it is IgA. All right, so let's start our discussion. This is drbeen.com. In the description there is a link to the best ever prices for the drbeen.com one time price of $67. This is Labor Day gift. Okay, so here is the study, awareness of SARS-CoV-2 Omicron variant infection among adults with recent COVID-19 seropositivity. This is what I'll be discussing. This is for Omicron. This is their supplement tables, and this is the scientists say that inhaled and nasal vaccine may be needed to beat Omicron. China just approved the world's first inhaled vaccine. So that's the interesting news. Okay, I'm going to go to these are the PDFs. Today, actually, I went through this and processed and worked on it with Cool Beans on the Cool Beans Cafe. So if you wanted to see how this lecture was put together, you can actually see the Cool Beans Cafe live, and the latest video there is what shows that. Okay, so gifts for humanity continuing even on Labor Day. So 56% Omicron COVID infections are asymptomatic, or they feel like common cold or mild or insignificant. So this is the study. Abstract is, the summary is, they had about 201, I believe. Was it 201 or 210? So somewhere like that, 201 like individuals, 63% females. Age range was mean age was 50 years, range was 23 to 84. 56% of the individuals had, okay, let me back up. All those individuals that had the seropositivity, that is, they had the antibody to COVID, nucleocapsid proteins, 56% of them reported not being aware of the symptoms or having symptoms that they thought was common cold. 44% had symptoms that they said we were aware, we were COVID positive, then we went for testing or got testing and we tested positive as well. Now, interestingly, in this 56% who were unaware, There were 10% of this 56% who were aware, or when they were told that, hey, you have the antibodies, they could recall that, yeah, I felt like some symptoms like common cold. Now, interestingly, the question, let me put that question in your mind. Who was less aware or more aware? Was it people with the comorbidities that were more aware, meaning they developed symptoms sufficient enough that they became aware? Was it old age? Was it male sex, female sex? Was it people who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated? So, interestingly, the most aware group, or the group that showed awareness with statistically significant data, were healthcare workers. And I think there is a bias in this study because the study was actually done on the employees of Cedar Sinai hospital system in Los Angeles and their patients. So, because of that, healthcare workers were a part of the group as well. And so they were participant too. So, healthcare workers were 2.46 times more likely to be aware compared to non healthcare workers. And that may be so. I was discussing when I was putting this lecture together. My thought was that healthcare workers will be less aware because they are exposed to the lower doses, and so they would just not even know when the infection occurred. On the other hand, healthcare workers will be more acutely aware because they will know the symptoms. So anytime, let's say, they start having runny nose or cough, they would immediately suspect that maybe I have COVID. So 2.46 times more likely to know that they had symptoms. When they did regression analysis with adjustment, they found out that males barely, if you see here, 1.01 to 3.45 is the range of confidence interval, and p value is also on the border. Actually, it is significant, but barely significant. 1.87 times more aware males. Old age, less aware. So, about 22% less likelihood of knowing. Now, the question could become, and again, if you see here 0.64 to 1, just at the border again, these two values could almost be not significant. Now, the question could be, why were the folks in the older age less aware? And the answer can be that because as we age, our cells, just like other body tissues, they reduce their functioning. An immune system reduces its function as well. Cell production reduces, cells activity reduces. So if the COVID is there and the body is not responding as aggressively, then they may not even know. However, we also know with COVID that in older age, it can actually cause more severe outcome than younger age too. So there is that paradox too. Now, there was another interesting thought, and that was vaccination status. Were the people who were vaccinated or those who were not vaccinated more aware of their infection or not? And so there was no statistically significant difference between the two groups. Interestingly, of course, this is hospital employees and patients. 93 or 94% were vaccinated. Only 6% were unvaccinated. So in a group of 210-ish, this is a very small group. So I don't think it is much. Um, I don't think there is decent sample size to be able to say, will vaccinated know they are aware of the symptoms or not, or unvaccinated know about the symptoms or not. So that is it. That is a summary. The summary is 56% of people who are seropositive, that means they got exposed, their body responded, they made antibodies, they took care of the infection. 56% did not even know that they had COVID. 56% did not even know they had COVID. This is Very interesting. Okay, now details. The question they were trying to answer was, in Omicron era, so this was specifically for Omicron, what is the percentage of asymptomatic or mildly symptom? They didn't call it mildly, they really called it, I forgot the word. It was lesser than, meaning they were not even, patients were not even aware that this is COVID. The They were trying to answer this question to figure out, is it possible that Omicron's spread is more because more adults are asymptomatic? That was what they were trying to figure out. So their conclusion did become that if 56% of the population is infected but does not know, then maybe the faster transmission of Omicron is because of that, or that is one component of it. So the hospital was Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, California. Employees and patients, they were actually participating in a different study, longitudinal study for seroconversions, and they took the hospital doctors, they took a subset of this group and ran this analysis. How this analysis was done is that this bigger study asked everyone, the participants, to provide a monthly survey of their symptoms, also provide information or call in if they become COVID positive, or call in an update if they receive a vaccine. And these individuals were doing this survey and updates every month, plus they were giving their blood sample every month as well. Now, they were giving their blood at September, so that is the Delta wave, then December 15 and onwards. The individuals that were participant or were eligible for this study, they were 210, and their blood samples were from December 15 to May 4. That is the Omicron time. Now the question will be, how did they know that somebody had Omicron? And this is the answer. This is actually a very delicate point, that how did they know that this was Omicron and not Delta or not something else in the past? Or how did they know that the infection was recent and not in the past? The answer was that as they were taking their blood samples every month, they were looking at the antibodies. And if somebody had, let's say they're taking my blood samples, and let's say in September, my antibody levels were zero point 0.4 on the testing index. But in May, they were 1.4 or more, which was the cutoff to say positive. Then this infection had to be between September to May. Now, if it is September to May, that includes Delta and Omicron. But if you take a person's blood from December to May, and then it changes from a zero point 0.4 cutoff or a lower cutoff to a higher, then that will mean the person got recently infected. And this was comfortably a window where Omicron was more dominant. So that's how they saw that. And they were looking for IgG, for nucleocapsid, which is one of the proteins that covers the RNA of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Actually, nucleocapsid proteins are the ones that cover every virus's, what is that? The RNA or DNA material. So with this, let's look at a couple of tables as well. So this is their supplementary material. Here, number of monthly surveys, 54 or 26% did one survey, 30% did two, and so on. So that is one. Then this is the characteristics of the source study, the bigger study. So if you see here, the total was 2,479, 54 years age, 10 to 96 was the range, and so on. There are males, females, and then other breakdown here as well. This is the vaccination status. If you see here, under the last line here, unvaccinated 6.2% out of all the 210. So that was a very small percentage, 13 people only. So any numbers based on vaccinated versus unvaccinated, I don't think were reasonable because the sample size was small. Secondly, within the vaccinated, if you see, there were one dose, two dose, and so on. So I would just take it with a grain of salt. Here, this is interesting. This is the various categories and their awareness or unawareness to the infection. If you see, the p values are actually all not significant, or they throw the numbers in insignificant status, except healthcare employees. If this data, if this study was larger, then there may have been enough data to be able to have significant p values to be able to then say males more aware or females more aware, etc. Then pre-existing characteristics as well. Once again, the only data point that is valid or statistically significant was healthcare workers. For example, obesity didn't have good data, hypertension, diabetes. It's not that they did not matter. I don't think this size was not big enough. They're trying to have these cohorts within 210 people. So this is the study. This is it. So the study's takeaway is that 56% of the population infected with Omicron become positive without actually knowing or having even a thought that this is COVID. M. Gregory says COVID is polio. No. So, with this, let me just very quickly show you this little news as well. Scientists may say that inhaled and nasal vaccine may be needed to beat Omicron. China just approved the world's first one. So, this is CanSino. What they have is they created an adenovirus-based vaccine, which is also part of Johnson and Johnson or AstraZeneca, Oxford, is similar vaccine on COVID, adenovirus-based vaccine. That means it has a DNA within the adenovirus, and they made it inhaled. The only benefit is the following: our body has this behavior that if we have an infection, so let's say this is the so this is our, let's say, airway here, nasal side, mouth, pharynx, larynx, airways. If you are sending the antigen in the airways, we have specialized clusters of lymphatic tissues that are here, just like we have those what are these anyways, we have lymphatic tissues everywhere. So when you expose these tonsils, I was going to say, when you expose these tissues to the antigen, then the B cells that live here and the T cells that live here, they will get trained and they will actually proliferate and be more here and be more in the local lymph nodes. So when the actual virus arrives, it will be a faster, immediate response from the immune cells within the respiratory epithelium. And so that would be fast, number one. Number two, the vaccine would be less needed to go to the body. To, for example, if you inject it in a muscle, now vaccine has to be powerful enough, or the adjuvants have to be powerful enough to kick the immune system enough, to cause enough of irritation or triggering of the immune system for the cells to develop and go everywhere in the body. Here, the cells would go everywhere in the body as well, but majority of them would stay within the epithelial surfaces. So that is interesting vaccine. And they said something that was really interesting was the following: with the third dose of the same vaccine, look here, the initial jab proved 66% effective in preventing the infection and 92% effective for severe disease. That's the kind of thing we hear from others too. Then they said one another interesting thing, and that was, okay, so I cannot find it, but the third booster, if I can find booster, CanSino's booster vaccine is an inhaled version of the one-shot adenovirus COVID-19 jab that CanSino developed in partnership with Chinese military. The initial jab proved 66% effective in preventing infection and 92% effective against severe infection. It has been greenlit. There was more data here. Oh well. I think this is the one. 4 weeks after receiving the inhaled booster, 92.5% of the people had developed neutralizing antibodies for Omicron. In July, Chinese scientists published a preprint study showing that the people who received one booster dose of CanSino's inhaled vaccine after 2 doses of inactivated jab from Chinese maker Sinovac developed more antibodies than people who received the Sinovac shot. So what they're saying here is those who received the injection, they had less antibodies developed compared to those who received the booster as an inhaled uh, product. So that's very interesting. Okay, so this is it. Thank you very much for being here. Have a happy Labor Day. We are doing this labor together here as well. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you would like to support this work, there is a link in the description to buy Dr. Bean's access for the premium content. Don't waste that opportunity. It is really low price and it's a one-time fee. Or you can buy me a coffee, or you can become part of patrons. Even $5 per month is actually good. Or you can use PayPal. You can become part of other places as well, like Substack. The links are in the description. Thank you very much, and I would see you tomorrow.